Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name's Simon. I'm the head of experience based out here in Tokyo. And I'm a self-confessed shopaholic. I'm a retail addict. I love everything about the retail industry. And I've been lucky enough to be designing for retail clients for the last 20 years. And now's a great time to be doing that, primarily due to all of the new technologies that we have at our disposal. These physical and digital worlds of retailers have long since been on a collision course. And this is becoming more urgent than ever now because of the dependency on e-commerce. And retailers are asking us, how can they transform their physical experiences to have a new purpose, a new meaning, a new cause? COVID-19 has rapidly accelerated this. So people have become much more conscious of where they are, their proximity to others, their surroundings, the amount of contact they have with the physical world. And that's both at work and at play. So contactless transactions, for example, have become the baseline requirement with a lot of consumers. They expect that to be the fundamental way that they can transact in any retail environment. So the most tactile place where retailers have spent so much money and so much time creating the best experience of their brand is fundamentally losing its advantage. We've also witnessed a huge uptake in home delivery service throughout the pandemic. And home delivery means that people aren't in the high street. They're not getting back into the behavior and habit of visiting physical stores, which is a huge concern for retailers. We're also hearing of governments like the South Korean government lending their full support to untapped industries. So whether that's home health, whether it's working from home, or whether it's e-commerce and home services that are delivery-based, they're fully investing in helping and supporting those industries as the norm of the future. Bad news for retailers. But retailers have also had a lot of bad headlines around their own capabilities throughout this pandemic, as customers' needs have shifted and changed, so they haven't been able to respond. Panic buying is something which we've seen happen all over the world, but yet surely having the ability to provide stock levels at a time of crisis is a baseline expectation that consumers have every right to have from their retailers. Price gouging is something there's been a lot of complaints around. And whilst a lot of people have reacted very quickly to try and stop this, the reality is I shouldn't be asked to pay more by a brand that I'm loyal to for something which is now a fundamental requirement in my everyday shopping need. I think a lot of retailers have also fallen foul of creating the need for more traffic. So we've been visiting more stores, doing more safaris to find the same level of stock items that we would normally have found just on one visit. I myself found myself making safaris around Tokyo just to aggregate the things that I was told I needed during a declaration of emergency. So I had this kind of realization throughout this, as whilst I'm hearing things like contact tracing as a buzzword, the reality is that that doesn't happen in retail. They don't know who I am. They don't know who I am in stores with. They don't know how long I'm in stores. They don't know why I'm there, the purpose of my visit. In reality, they know very little about me. In Japan, whilst there's a real understanding of that amongst a lot of our clients, I think a lot of the retailers have been caught in the cold, particularly around an understanding of convenience and what is redefining something like convenience during a pandemic like COVID-19. And they found it impossible to react at scale. They don't have the agility built into their retail environments, so they haven't been able to respond. I had a conversation with a client just before the pandemic, and he was telling me that the cost of delivery was proving extremely hard for them to get low enough to make it viable for customers. HelloFresh in China offer 30-minute delivery services inside a range of 3 kilometers free of charge. So this client in Japan was missing something. There's an ingredient that's not there within their understanding and thinking about what it is and how this plays a role in their ecosystem. And as with many retailers, they're finding the same burden of highly expensive property, kind of layered with analog experiences and only historical data that mean they can't change, they can't transform, they're not able to react to the things that are changing in our world. Jack Ma, who owns HelloFresh, has this new retail concept. So as many of you will know, he's a digital entrepreneur. He comes from a background and understanding of data and technology. And he believes that you need to build physical stores as a bridge and not an island in your retail ecosystem. They're not different, they're a part of it, and they're connected through the force of data. That data is at the heart of the offer, and it's surrounded by customer data, or CDP, inventory data, so information about the supply chain from the PIM, from the OMS, and also information about the retail store environment and its usage and the way that people are transacting within it. He layers around that the three parts of the offer, which are dining, retail, and logistics, which he believes is the future of that particular segment of new retail. And then that permeates out into a variety of physical and virtual experiences. What interests me particularly is this vacuum around stores in retail and the physical data that we have that tells us about people's interactions, people's movements, trends, that enables us to really create some visibility. And IoT is absolutely the best way of doing that. There are devices like video analytics cameras, beacons which help us to understand where consumers are and how they're transitioning their way through store environments. There are things like freshness sensors that help us to really understand the condition of goods, humidity sensors, and also RFID, which help us to understand the location of the goods in stores. So these all create data inputs, and then we need to have platforms in which we can push experiences out upon. So whether that's at the point of sale, to micro signage or digital signage elsewhere in the store, or to the devices of the consumers itself, then we have to have the ability to push experiences out in real time. So how can IoT be lightly, ethically, accessibly, and datably engineered and designed to drive business consumer impact is a topic I think that's very, very fundamental to what's changing in the consumer and in the retailer's world right now. Deploying IoT should mean that we can create lightning fast experiences, and that those lightning fast experiences will fundamentally reduce the load on the customer. They'll also reduce the need for unnecessary store visits. They'll help reduce contact points, and they'll make the whole thing more effortless and seamless and light for customers. We need to consider that a store visit happens in moments and micro moments. And this calls for the ability to have to respond in double quick time. Because impulse purchasing isn't called impulse purchasing for no reason. It happens in a fraction of a moment. Shopping is time and location sensitive. And we need smartphones that are really able to understand and work within this. We need to better recognize the opportunities to anticipate and respond behavior by having the ability to transmit messages and wayfinding into the consumer's hands. We also need to be able to capture that data and work with that data with an intelligent way at the edge, not having the lag of calling back to core fundamental technology platforms, which will create a delay in the experience and lose us that impulse purchase. We also have to be connected to influences outside of the retail world, the things that are motivating and driving consumers into that world, trends, maybe a change in the weather, the things that are making us have that need to go to the store. We also need to know much more about the customer that's in the store at that moment. So we need live customer data that is flowing through the store environment. And it's flowing through the environment, not just into the messaging and communications through predictive modeling and anticipatory kind of approaches to design, but also into the hands of the employees, so that they can create a much more fluent service for customers and really kind of create a decisive interaction at the moment that it's needed by customers in their retail stores. Take this as an example. If I'm arriving in a car parking lot of a store, there are some fundamental data that should be being gathered at that point. It can be the car registration number as referenced off of an archive. It can be information that's based on the make or the model as connected to my profile. But at that moment, we should have the recognition of the fact that I'm there. A beacon could then, for example, notice that I've entered into a zone in the store which is just occupied with extra large or bulk products. At this point, we have some data points that we can work with, because I have a small car with a big trunk and my shopping ambitions just got bigger. So how can we enable that impulse purchase to happen without derailing the rest of the experience that I have planned for the trip to the store that day? Quite simply, based on the data that we have, we should be able to offer a personalized home delivery service at one touch. And we can distribute that to the iWatch or the device that the consumer's carrying with them at that moment, which means that fundamentally I can continue my store purchasing and still have the impulse purchase facilitated. There's lots of impact here. My basket size is maximized. I get to do both. I get to have enough space in the trunk of my car, but also buy the thing that I was impulsively wanting to acquire. It's also maximizing the yield of the store. It's making sure that we're selling more for the space that we're utilizing. There are some obvious cost efficiencies around the cost to acquire customers in this particular instance. And there's also data both being created and potentially influencing not only this channel, but other channels. From a customer's point of view, I get a better experience. It's more convenient. And I think I'm likely to show much more loyalty to a store or brand that gives me that kind of personalized level of service. When deploying IoT to tackle ethical considerations in retail environments, I was kind of spoilt for choice because it could have been power outage, it could be the use of paper products and packaging. And fundamentally, what I thought was the most simple one to apply to IoT was the problem of food waste in the retail industry. Many products have a shelf life. They have a time lock moment by which they transition to becoming useless, uninteresting, unsaleable, unpalatable. So we need to build retail environments that understand this. They understand the life expectancy of a product, and they're able to monitor things like perishable and promotional goods as they transition through that life expectancy. We also need to know the optimal value at any given time or moment compared to demand. And that isn't just the general demand, that can be the demand in an individual. So we get into the space of things like price sensitive sort of personalization. We also have to have the ability to really understand how we can trigger through messaging. So at that perfect moment, make the perfect recommendation so that we can help to facilitate those goods transitioning from a store before their life expectancy reaches its maximum. So can consider this as a flow in the same way. If I was shopping and I'm using the barcode reader on my phone on the back of the trolley, then we have an indication either through my proximity to a sensor or through my phone that I'm entering into the fruit and veg area at a store. Based on knowledge about me and my propensity to purchase fruit in this particular situation, apples on a weekly basis, then we have the opportunity to really quickly analyze and understand all of the inventory we have, the life stage that it's at, and then facilitate moving those goods on that we believe might be at the edge of their life, knowing that I have a high propensity to want to purchase things that are discounted in that way. So the freshness sensors, humidity sensors, the cameras that are constantly monitoring the life of products work together to combine and understand that there is an apple or a range of apples that should be made available to me at a personalized price. That price can be distributed to the micro signage. It could be distributed to the iPhone that's on the back of the trolley at this point. But in reality, it's personal. It's tailored to me, knowing that I have a high propensity to want to make this a purchase. The end result is great because the fruit ends up in my fruit basket and consumed and not in the bin. The impact of this is sort of far-reaching, as well as sort of the recovery of lost revenue. It's also a reduction of the cost of waste disposal services. In theory, we also have a lot of learnings because I'm creating more data, and that rich data set will tell us more about how to optimize the supply chain, how to optimize the inventory that we have in store environments. From a customer's point of view, it's great too. I get a bargain, and this perpetuates my loyalty to the store and brand also. From an accessibility point of view, I wanted to talk about building a data-driven placement strategy. And this is something which will really enable us to facilitate and encourage the combination of purchases. And it's this combination of purchases that really make Amazon and platforms like it thrive. So that ability to connect products into a holistic experience through recommendations and product combinations. So this requires a bunch of understandings. We have to understand what's motivating and influencing a store visit. We also have to understand where the consumer is in the store. We have to know what space they're in. And then we can anticipate their likely pathway through the product ranges and start to trigger messaging and dynamic signage, which will help them to understand the benefits of a new value exchange around a combination of products. So imagine this scenario. We're aware of an event. There's something happening in the calendar. It's a sport event, it's an entertainment event. And what we see is the ability for us to configure a bunch of products around that to create a combination or bundle. When I'm in the store, you recognize the fact that I'm the same pattern of behavior as other people that have also been through and been triggered into this combination of products. And at that moment, we trigger messaging. which really starts to articulate the value that those combination of products would enable us to have and to basically enjoy the experience of the event more. If at this moment there was a concern that I perhaps had some of these items in my fridge at home, then we have the ability through the app to connect to my connected home and ask my connected fridge. It's something which gives me the confidence, therefore, to progress through the store and to pick up the rest of the items that make that bundled purchase. How we would do that wouldn't just be through a message, it would potentially be through wayfinding. So we could help to navigate you through another series of beacons and location tracking to make sure that you get all of the items that are combined to make this purchase the perfect experience of the event. There's some impact here. There's some impact that's not obviously just my average basket size increases because I came for one thing and I left with many. And so the revenue per customer also increases. But there's also the ability for us to really optimize the way that our shelves work. And particularly those high performance areas where partnerships and promotions with other companies allow us to generate slotting fees so that we can really commercialize the way parts of our shelves are working when we're in the situation where we can make these sort of combined recommendations to customers. So it's a great outcome for customers because they get an easy and enjoyable way of getting through and getting a better experience of the entertainment or whatever the event is that's happening in their world. Finally, from a dataful point of view, I wanted to talk a little bit about video analytics and how that combined with atomic design can really unleash some operational agility into physical store environments. Physical stores need to be constantly fine-tuned to maximize their potential. And we spend so much time doing that with website homepages and e-commerce carts. But in physical stores, there's still a very heavy reliance on a manager's intuition or historical data. And what we need to get to is into live dashboards and video analysis, where we're using machine learning to really understand the mental barriers, the hot spots, the cold spots, identify the patterns of behavior whilst customers are in stores so that we can work with them. The impact of this is that stores can become many things at different times. So, for example, at weekends when there's high footfall, a store can be optimized if there is an atomic design principle to the way that it's been designed so that it can be maximized for conversion. At weekdays, when customers perhaps have more time, we can afford them more time and more comfort because the atomic system understands the data points and would allow us to create an environment that's more conducive to spending more time in it browsing. So we get this optimized kind of relationship between the design of the retail environment and the data that they're pulling about how it's being used and the traffic that's having an effect on it, so that we can create a place which is just operationally just more efficient. It's more conducive to the right output and the right experience for customers at the right time. Importantly, it also lets us optimize our staff deployment. It lets us really understand where staff can be best placed to have the maximum effect because they're a big investment for retailers. From a customer's point of view, it's a really good outcome because the relationship with the retailer is either convergent or divergent at the right moments. So if I have a problem that needs a fast solution, then it gets solved in double quick time because the experience is configured to do that. If I need a more divergent experience about maximizing or learning, then we create an environment that's also conducive to that because we have the data that enables to understand the right time and moment to be able to do that. So all in all, I believe the future of retail and physical retail doesn't just mean the physical stores finding a differentiated place to play. It's really about them becoming a completely connected part of the retailer's ecosystem. Achieving this is going to rely on data. We have to have more data about the space, more data about the product, and more data about the customer. And then combine these in the same way that we would use to optimize an e-commerce website or some kind of complex kind of web environment. So treating our stores more as a product, and through doing this way, we'll be able to realize the ambition of having a better, smarter retail environment that offers every customer an ever better experience at every interaction, regardless of the channel. Deploying IoT through a lead-led approach, I believe, should be at the epicenter of this spatial transformation. Thank you for listening. I'm sorry I can't be there with you today in person, but I need to now go off to a store in Ginza where we're in the process of building a prototype. That prototype is for a department store, and it's deploying many of these things that I've been discussing with you today in a live environment. So thank you for listening, and good luck everybody else with the rest of the summit.